Hey, what's going on, everybody? Listen, I wanted to apologize for it being so long since I put out a video, but I got COVID, like really bad, and it was by far the worst of any time of getting COVID, and it was terrible. So I just wanted to say I'm sorry it's taken 3 weeks to put a video out, and I know you guys are probably waiting on these giveaways, so we're gonna start with a giveaway. From the last video, I asked you guys to comment below on where you were from, and I would randomly pick somebody to win a piece of Christopher Scott merch, and that's what we are doing right now. So we're using this random comment picker to put in our YouTube video link, and we're gonna allow it to pick, and here we go. Unfortunately, this person can't win because this comment is actually how many babies, which was the other giveaway, which we'll get into later on in this video. So let's go ahead and pick somebody else here and see who it is. And look at that. Susan Elizabeth from Ontario, Canada. We're gonna be shipping you some merch, so make sure that you reach out. Instagram, DM, or Facebook Messenger, or email, all are below. Make sure you reach out to me, and I'll give you instructions on how to claim your free t-shirt. So with that, you know what? Let's go ahead and do another giveaway. We're gonna do a giveaway during this video again. That'll be given away in the next video. So make sure you stay tuned and you watch through and listen for instructions on how to enter for this giveaway. All right, guys, let's get into this.
What's going on, everybody? Well, we are back for another video today, and in the last video we are going to give away 2 pieces of merch, or select people for the 2 pieces of merch that were given away in that video, and we'll get to that in just a minute. But I asked you in that video, and I've asked you a couple times, this waterfall tank, should we revitalize it and set this thing back up? And that's exactly what we're going to be doing today. I'm going to go through the actual build process on this thing, because I built this thing 3 years ago, I believe. So we're going to go through the build process of this thing. We're going to get it cleaned up, and we're going to rescape this thing and stock this thing with fish today. I love this tank. It's probably one of my favorites that I've ever done, and I just want to reshare with you exactly how this thing was built, and with that, let's get into this video today.
All right, guys, well, before I get into actually scaping this tank, the first thing I need to do is I need to figure out the filtration. And what I'm going to do is build some sort of an internal filtration system, and I need to be able to use a pump because of some of the elements that are going to go into this, but we'll get into that later. So let me show you what we're going to do. So I had a piece of plexiglass that was just a scrap piece of plexiglass, and what I did was simply score the plexiglass on the lines that I wanted to bend, heat those bends up with a torch, and then literally shaped it into this shape right here. I didn't film that, so I wish I would have to show you guys, but it's a pretty simple process. This stuff bends pretty easy. So this gives us our box. What we're gonna do is we're gonna set this in here, and this is gonna go right about here. Now what I need to do is I need to drill some inlets and outlets on this, and then I'll show you kind of how this is gonna be set up. So basically drilled a hole large enough for this hose to go through. We're going to use this little 50-gallon per hour fountain pump that'll be enclosed inside of this container right here, which will act as our filtration system. We will need some mechanical and biological media in here, so we'll probably use filter floss and some lava rocks. This will allow water to filter through this and then come out of this hose up here, which we will then use to direct in other places where we want it to go. So now I need to understand what the water line is going to be, because I need to be able to drill holes in here for the water overflow into this particular box. So we got some holes drilled for the overflow into this box. All right, guys, well, since I have kind of the layout of where the wood is going to go, I now need to go ahead and mount my filter box, and how I'm going to do that is pretty simply. So I know it's going to be right here. And what I want to do, since I'm not going to be able to get my caulk gun down inside of here to be able to seal the inside of this, so what I'm going to do is, I would use a dry erase marker, but I don't have one. I'm just using a washable marker. So I'm literally just going to draw a line where this meets the glass on both sides. That will give me the ability to put a bead of silicone right where it needs to be on the inside of that glass, so I can seat this in there fully where it's sealed on both sides. All right, so we have our silicone in here. So we're literally just going to take our filter box and we're going to seat this right inside of the silicone, right along the line that we made. Okay, now that the bead of silicone is there and everything is seated, I'm gonna take my finger and just go ahead and clean this up a little bit. I gotta let this cure for 24 hours before we move to the next step, but the next step will actually be scaping out the background of this tank.
The next day.
All right, guys, well, in this section of the video, basically what I'm doing is just laying out rocks on the background around this piece of driftwood or spider wood, just to make it look and appear as if this particular piece of spider wood is growing out of some sort of a rock embankment. And I will continue to lay these rocks around until I get those perfect, and then we'll add some more elements in a moment. All right, guys, well, I got this kind of initial scape done. And what I've done is just really kind of placed the spider wood and the driftwood where I want it to be, and then kind of filled in the back with some rock. Alright guys, well the background is now in and it has dried, so we're going to need to start trimming away some of this foam, and that's what I'm going to do now. So what I'm going to use is a razor scraper and just a regular old knife, and we're going to start cutting this stuff away. Alright guys, well now that we have all of the undesirable foam kind of trimmed away, now it's time to start adding a little bit smaller rocks to cover up the foam and kind of give this background some detail. So we're going to do that now. And as you can see here, what we've done is we've just used the silicone and we have literally filled in over top of all of this foam with some smaller pieces of rock just to give it some detail. We're going to continue this process until we get all the foam covered up, and then we'll probably add some more elements to this as we get moving. Let's continue on. All right, if you notice, as I put the silicone down and put the rocks in, there's some exposed silicone. Now that will dry clear. However, what we're going to do to give it a more aesthetic look is we're going to use some cocoa fiber. So as I'm doing this, I'm going to come back and basically push this cocoa fiber down inside of those little crevices, make sure that it's nice and into that silicone, and that will cover that silicone up completely. So we'll come back over here and sprinkle it around these rocks as well, and then of course whatever does not dry we'll just vacuum out. All right guys, well, just to check in, so I've got some of the detail work going here. We're working on some down here, and then we're going to start working on some more of the background. So I will keep you updated as we move along. We got all of the big rocks in the driftwood attached to the back of the tank. We got all the foam covered with cocoa fiber and smaller rock. So now really what we need to do is vacuum all the excess out and put some finishing touches on here. We also need to test the water feature and see how that's going to look. So let's get that done now. Now we just need to plug in, pump. Whoa, that was way too high. As we can see, we're gonna have to pull the pump out and readjust it. All right, the pump has been readjusted. Let's see if we got less pressure. That is a lot better. We still need it to be a lot lower, so I'm gonna adjust this hose a little bit. All right, guys, well, now everything is rinsed off, washed off, dried up. So what we're gonna do is we're actually gonna add some more rocks to this side here and bring it all the way out to the glass, all the way up to the top here. I'm gonna use silicone for that. It'll hide all of this foam on this side. And then we're gonna use some silicone and some coconut fibers to go ahead and lay a background on this to completely cover this glass in over here. We may add some smaller rocks on this side of the glass as well. We'll see as we move through this. So all I've really done is just literally laid a nice big amount of silicone, and we're just going to start pushing rocks into it just like that. And this silicone that's on the side will actually be covered in coconut fiber as we get this done. All right, I went ahead and added some more rocks to the side over here, and that is just to make the background go from one side all the way to the other. Then I also added rocks on this side, packed it with some coconut fiber, and then what I'm doing here is I've actually added a little cup to hold a plant, and I'm starting to put some silicone around the rocks and things up here, and then we're going to cover this whole area up here with coconut fiber and some coconut husk, I believe is what it is. Alright, so basically what I did is I just laid some silicone down and then used a foam brush and just started pushing it in. I just want to make sure that my glass is completely covered. Okay, well now that it is all covered, we're just going to take our hand and make sure that this stuff is all pressed in to that silicone really, really well. We want it to really adhere to the silicone. That way it does not wash away if it gets wet. Well, now we have that in there. We're going to go ahead and start looking at any other fine details that we want to add to this, like adding moss. All right, guys. Well, this is what the background looks like. We're actually going to paint the background because right now you can see through the glass in the back. We want to give it an illusion that there's more underneath this when you're looking at it from the front. So we'll paint that black. And then once we get the substrate added in here, what we will do is we're actually going to add stones. one big stone over here to kind of hide the filtration box. And then as we get the substrate built up, we'll actually start adding some stone under here to give the appearance that the actual spider wood is touching the ground. But we'll get into that once we get all of this done. We have some moss up here that's been attached to the background, and then just an overall dirt background where it looks like a riverbed has kind of been eroded away. And I will tell you that here we have a cup for a plant, as well as a spot here for a plant, and then another plant can actually go in the top of the filtration box, some sort of a tropical plant. We don't know exactly what we're going to do with it just yet, but we will figure that out. But for now, we got to let this thing cure for a little bit. Once it has finished curing, then we will go ahead and move into the next stage, which is scaping the bottom out and getting this thing finished up. So let me know in the comments what you guys think of this so far. All right, guys, well, now that everything has dried up, we just need to give this thing a really good rinse, drain it out, and we're going to move this thing in where we're going to finish out the small minor details to get this tank complete. We talked about in the last video restoring this tank, and as you can see, this thing is disgusting. I literally took the fish out of it and just drained the water and let it go, and this is what it looks like, but this is not what it's going to continue to look like. Let's go ahead and get this thing cleaned up today and get it restored so we can put some fish in here. One of my favorite tanks that I've ever built, and well, I just let it go because we put something else in its place. I definitely want to restore it, so that's what we're going to do today. So what we need to start with, really, and I've actually started this process, and that was to remove the bigger rocks from the bottom of this setup, and now we need to go ahead and remove the substrate, and we're going to do that now. Now, to remove this substrate is going to be a pretty simple process. All we're going to do is just flip this thing up on its side very carefully and start pushing the substrate to one side. Now that we have as much of the substrate as we can possibly get down into this side, we're going to flip this up on its end and just start scooping this substrate into this bucket, because we're actually going to reuse this substrate, so I don't want to lose it, but we definitely need to clean it. So now I'm going to use some water to go ahead and start spraying the inside of this tank to try to get some of this substrate down to the bottom. I think I've gotten most all of the usable substrate out of here, so we're just going to go ahead and clean this thing and get all of the excess substrate out and onto the ground. So what I'm doing by flipping this completely over is giving me an open space where I can go ahead and put the hose up inside of here and then be able to blow all of this old substrate and dirt and debris out. And as you can see, there's tons of debris still left in here that we need to get out. So because this table runs at a slope, we're gonna go ahead and leave this thing up on its side while we fully clean the inside. So let's go ahead and get this thing clean so we can get it rescaped, planted, and get us some new fish in here. All right, guys, well, we're gonna be using three things really to clean this aquarium. Number one is water, of course. Number two is a razor scraper to get all of the calcium deposits and things like that left over from the water drying up in this tank off of the glass. And then we're also gonna use some Blue Dawn. And most people are like, you can't use soap inside your aquarium. You're right, most of the time. However, if you are cautious and you use very, very small amount and you make sure that you are very diligent in getting all of it out of the tank, when you are done, it's safe to use Blue Dawn in your aquarium. I'm not recommending you do it because if you kill your fish, that's on you. But I have been using this stuff forever, so you know, it's a trial and error thing. Figure out how to do it, and you can actually use it to clean the inside of your aquarium really well. You know, and I really started with that because I feel like if it's safe enough to remove oil from poor little wildlife that are stuck in oil slicks, as an example, then why can't you use it in your aquarium? And I've been cleaning plastic bins and such with it for a long time and have never had any problems. So like I said, I'm not going to recommend it to you. Do that at your own risk, but that's what we're going to be using today, so I don't want any hate in the comments. Anyway, let's get back into this cleaning. So what I'm going to do is take a very small amount of Dawn, one little drop, that's all it takes. And then I'm going to suds that up really well and just hit it with some water, just like that. It's not a lot, just some. And I'm gonna take this razor scraper, I'm gonna dip this into this sudsy material, and I'm just gonna start scraping this glass top to bottom. And I will say that you wanna stay away from the seams as much as possible, because what you don't wanna do is start cutting your silicone seams in the corners. You just wanna scrape, I'm just scraping off all the dirtiness off the glass. We have a clear view inside of this tank when we get it back together. Our water here is very hard, so it has a lot of minerals in it and leaves a lot of mineral deposits. It makes our water really good for guppies. crappies actually, because they like really hard water. And I'm not concerned about the bottom glass because obviously you can't see the bottom glass. All I'm worried about just the viewing panel of this tank, because we want to make sure that it's got a nice view inside. Okay, now we're going to take the razor scraper and we're actually going to work on the side glass as well. So guys, as you can see right in here, we still have some stuff on the glass, and then up here in the front we also have a little bit of stuff still on the glass. So we want to go ahead and get that cleaned off. And with it being dry now like this, you can really start to see where there's problems on the glass and get this stuff really fully cleaned. Well, now that this thing is cleaned out, the first thing we really need to do, go ahead and get some substrate down inside of this tank here. And we're gonna go ahead and use this sand substrate that was actually in it before. Go ahead and get this stuff spread out as much as we possibly can before we start the hardscape. So we now have all of our sand substrate down here in the bottom. So what we need to do now is go ahead and start getting these really large pieces of rock back in the base of this tank. These pieces of rock are massive in size, and we want to go ahead and gently push these down in here, not to break the glass, but we want them in certain spots. Like I want one right up under here like this, kind of like right there. I'm going to take this other one and basically put it on the other side, right up in here like this. So that takes care of those big pieces of rock that we want down inside of there. Okay, so now that we have the rock back inside of this tank, what we want to do is go ahead and get just a tiny bit of water down in here to clean off all of the sand that's on the glass and all over the driftwood and things like that, so we can go ahead and start the next step. So let's go ahead and get some water in here, just a tiny bit. Now that we have this hardscape done, we need to go ahead and start planting. But actually, before we start planting, I need to go ahead and set up the filtration system. And the reason is because the filter box in this, as you saw during the initial part of this video where I recapped how this thing was built, it is actually contained behind this driftwood and all these rocks back here. The opening is up at the top, it takes water in from the bottom, and we need to get the filtration in there because there's actually going to be a plant right there on top in that filtration box opening. So let's go ahead and get the filtration set back up, and then we will go ahead and start talking about planting.
All right guys, we're going to take a little break from building this tank out in order to do another giveaway. Simple giveaway. All you have to do is comment below. If you celebrate Christmas, or even if you don't celebrate Christmas, it doesn't matter. If you do celebrate Christmas, put in the comments down below just something that you're really wanting for this Christmas this year. And if you don't celebrate Christmas, put down something below that you may want, just in general. I'll do the same thing again, use a random comment picker, and well, one of you will be lucky enough to randomly be chosen to receive one free Christopher Scott Angelfish t-shirt, and I will give you instructions in the next video on how to claim that. So make sure you enter as many times as you want in separate comments by simply commenting below what's something you want for Christmas, or if you don't celebrate Christmas, what is something in general you just want this season? With that, let's get back into the video.
Well, to get this filtration system set up, we're gonna start with dropping a pump right down inside of our little filtration box. Now granted, I need to pump water out of this and up. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna attach this hose to it. This hose looks pretty dirty, and there's a reason for that. And I will show you that in just a moment. But we're gonna go ahead and I've made sure that the pump flow is the lowest setting because we don't want like a high level of flow out of this. We just want it to filter. So we're gonna push this all the way down inside of here. And this is the original filtration media that was in here. So we're gonna go ahead and use this. It is a pantyhose full of lava rock, and we're just gonna push this right down on top of that filtration box. So as it pulls the water over the top of that, it actually gets a nice amount of biological filtration. And then we're gonna go ahead and stuff the top of this with some filter floss, which will give it a nice mechanical filtration. So with that, this thing has been put back in there. Now, as far as the hose is actually going to be glued right here and create a waterfall effect right outside of here onto this rock, which is what it was doing before. So we need to grab some super glue and go ahead and get that glued down. Before we do, let's see if there's enough water in here where we can go ahead and try this filter and make sure that it's actually going to pump water. So let me drop this cable back here and plug this in. And it does. And if you notice, It gives a nice little waterfall effect till it ran out of water, that is. We at least know that the pump works. Let's go ahead and get this thing glued down. What I want to do is just take this super glue and put it all over the bottom side of this hose, all into the rock. So we'll let that sit right there until it's fully cured. In the meantime, we're gonna go ahead and cover the top as well. We just don't want this hose to be out and exposed. Now granted, there will be a plant right here, so you won't actually see that hose right in that spot, but you'll see what I'm talking about. We're here at Lowe's and we need to pick up some plants for this waterfall tank. So let's go ahead and take a look and see what all, wow, look at this. This is an orchid. I have never seen an orchid that is grown like this. This must be a special kind. Any of you guys know about plants? If you do, let me know down in the comments what kind of orchid is this, because this thing is super cool. Like, this is like super cool. Wow. Back to what we were doing. Let's look at some of these little plants and figure out what we're going to put into this waterfall aquarium today. Okay, well, I think that we have made our choice. We want two different types of plants. We want a leafy, kind of foliage-based plant that's got some flowering abilities, and we also want some sort of a viney plant. So the first thing we're gonna go with is this guy right here. This right here is like a European ivy, and they literally say, "Hi there, friends call me Ivy." And this will be perfect for one side of this setup. And then we're also gonna go with a red vein plant. Why? Well, because I love these red vein plants. Let's get these guys and get them back home. All right, guys, these are some plants that I just took out of a setup that I broke down. This right here is some broadleaf Ludwigia that actually grew out of the tank, and this is emerged growth. We're gonna take this because we're gonna use this, and there's actually quite a few pieces of this that we're gonna use. And then there's a lot of this like mondo grass. This may actually be Italian Val. I'm not really sure what this was. Maybe Italian Val, but we're gonna grab some of that because that's gonna look great in the bottom of this tank. We have a big huge mat of Christmas moss or Java moss. I don't know that we'll take that, but let's see what else we can get. Coming over here to our plant holding setup, we're gonna take definitely an Anubias nana, some of this green Wentai crypt, some more of that grass that we could use. Maybe we'll take some of that. Oh, look at that, guys. That is a Madagascar lace bulb. I wonder if we can get this to grow in there. We're gonna try. Another Anubias, take that. Oh, look at this guy. Oh, he just ran off. I do have one fish in this setup that we were gonna talk about later on, but if you happen to have saw him, that was him. And I'll tell you his story at another time. Some undulata, little Anubias nana petite that's going on in here. Another Anubias nana. I think for now, maybe that'll be enough. We'll come back for some floating plants. Actually, I'm gonna take some of this Christmas moss right here because we'll use some of that. Okay, guys, well, let's go ahead and get this thing planted. And to start, what we're gonna use is we're actually gonna use an empty water bottle, and that is going to be the base for our plant right up in here. So I'm just gonna take a pair of scissors and just cut the bottom off. And I don't need a lot, but just like that. And what we want is just to be able to stick this down in here and for it to be a cup system to hold the soil of whatever plant we're gonna put in there. So we've got that done. We already have one done for this side or for the actual filtration box, and that's just from the previous plant that was in here. So this one will actually go right down inside of here like this, and we'll get that one in there in just a minute. But for now, let's go ahead and get these plants in these little pots and start talking about what we're putting in here. First things first, and that is a little red vein plant. And these little red vein plants actually come with a wicking system in the bottom of their pot. And I'm reusing that because that will actually hang down into the filtration system, allowing for water to be drawn into the plant. So we're gonna go ahead and dip this thing in here and just make sure that it gets a nice amount of water in it to start. And we're just simply gonna take this thing and we are gonna place it right down in the top of this filtration box. And we're gonna move some of these leaves around down to kind of hide the hose and everything else, and that thing will grow fantastic in here, guys, just like that. Now we're gonna move over to the other side now, which is this one. Now I actually built this cup inside of here to allow for a plant to go in here, and we're gonna basically do the same exact thing with this one. This one's gonna be a little different because we actually wrap the root ball in some filter floss to prevent the soil from falling through the bottom of the cup, and we're just gonna place this right down inside of there, and this guy will actually grow down as well and do really well in here. The ivy will start to grow down and wrap itself around our little piece of driftwood. So going back to this side where we're going to put something right here, it's not going to be anything crazy, but what I want to do is right in here, we're going to take our little plastic bottle that we cut apart, cut some slits in the bottom just to make sure that it's going to drain water okay, which it does. We're gonna fill this with planted substrate. So what I have done here is I have put some of this broadleaf Ludwigia that is grown outside of the water instead of in, and we're gonna shove this right down into this little hole right here, and we're gonna let this stuff kind of grow right here out and kind of over this rock and hang down like a vine, which I think will be super cool. We'll have to kind of see when it happens and see what occurs, but for now I think it looks kind of cool, to be honest with you. So we're gonna let that hang there, and now we need to start focusing on the actual bottom of the tank. So some of what we want to do is drop some of this grass. And I'm not sure, like I said, what type of grass this is, but what we're going to do is go ahead and plant this stuff down into the substrate. It's got a nice root system on it. Get it kind of tacked up underneath each of these little rocks here, and this stuff will do really well in here, I think, based on the setup that it came from. So what we also want to do is start poking some anubias and things like that down into some cracks and crevices where the water's going to be. I'm going to take this lace bulb and I'm going to put it right over here, kind of tuck it up under this rock. You only want to bury about half of the bulb, and the substrate over here is just the perfect depth for that. And then take a little rock and kind of just set it over it so it doesn't come out of the substrate when we fill this thing with water. Just like this. Some red wind tie crypt that we're going to put right here. I think that'll do really well in here. I think what we have left really is a bunch of moss. So we're gonna fill this little hole right here with a bunch of moss because the water will hit here nicely and keep that nice and moist, and that moss will grow well in there. And with that, guys, let's go ahead and get some more water in this setup and see what it looks like up to this point. All right, guys, well, this thing is completed. We planted it. The hardscape is all done. Everything is good. There is one problem with this, and that is we are very much cloudy on our water, and that's expected from this driftwood. It's been setting for a while, those kinds of things. But what we're gonna do, we've already treated the water for chlorine and chloramine, and what we used for that was API Aqua Essential to take care of the chlorine and chloramine. We also used some API Quick Start to go ahead and jump start our biological cycle. Even though it had some pre-cycled media in it, we still went ahead and did that. But we're gonna use one more product today, and we're gonna use this AccuClear. We're gonna see if we can clear this water up with AccuClear without having to do a water change. So let's see how this works. Crazy, because you can actually see the water clouding up, and you can see it right here. This cloudiness is actually the water clouding up from that AccuClear because it's grabbing all of that organic material that's in the water and kind of solidifying it so it'll fall down into the substrate or be picked up by the filtration system. But we're gonna see how this turns out, and we are gonna actually get out and grab some fish and see what kind of fish we're gonna put in here today. And when we get back, hopefully this water is crystal clear from this AccuClear. So we will see you back here in just a little while.
Later.
Well, we are back, and the water's not perfectly clear, but it is clear enough that we're going to be able to get these fish in here today. But looking around at this thing, look at that pink vein plant up here, followed by our broadleaf Ludwigia and our little English ivy, and you can see the waterfall coming out down into the water here. And then we have our Anubias nana, we have a red crypt, we have our little lace bulb down in here, we have another Anubias nana,
nana, some more Anubias nana, and then we have this little grass stuff that's down here in the bottom. But this tank is looking really, really good, and we are back with our fish. So before we talk about what fish we have, we're gonna go ahead and start acclimating these guys into this setup. We're gonna start with some temperature acclimation, and then we will move on to some parameter acclimation in just a little bit. So let this water sit and acclimate to this temperature, and we will be back in just a minute to get these fish parameter acclimated. All right, guys, well, these things have already been fully temperature and cup acclimated to the parameters. So what I'm gonna do is go ahead and release all of these new fish into this setup, and we'll talk about each one here in just a minute. So let's step away for just a second and go check on our guppy breeding setup and talk about the winner from the last giveaway. All right, guys, well, here are our guppy breeding setups, and these guys are doing fantastic. As you can see, we have all of our baby guppies over here. We're getting a little bit of algae growth on the sides of this plastic bin, and that's just simply because there's no plant coverage in here to keep the algae from growing, and that's okay. That does happen. We'll put some snails or something in here, but you can see all of these little baby guppies rolling around in here, and they are doing great. And in fact, we actually have more babies in this bin right here that were born after the initial count. We're not going to count these guys that are in here today as a part of the giveaway, but in the last video I asked you guys to guess how many baby guppies we had in that setup, and well, we have a winner, and that winner is Kathy Hendrick. So if you can reach out to me via Instagram DM, via Facebook Messenger, or even email, links to all are down below. Reach out and I will give you instructions on how to claim your free t-shirt. But let's get back over and check out these baby guppies. We're gonna go ahead and feed these guys, and we're gonna feed them some API tropical flake. And what we're gonna do is just take this stuff and put this, kind of crunch it up a little bit because they're tiny, tiny little guys. Put that right in there. And then for the adults, we're gonna go ahead and drop some of these tropical pellets in here because they love these things. Like I said, in this bin, we actually have some babies in here already again, and we're gonna go ahead and get those guys out, and we're gonna put them over into the grow out bin, and we'll continue to collect babies as they're born. But for now, hopefully you went on to enjoy this video and you enjoyed watching us put this tank back together, and maybe you went through for the first time and watched the build process. I really enjoyed building this tank more than 3 years ago, actually, which is crazy to think that it has been that long and this thing still functions so well. So if you'd like to see more builds like this, make sure you comment down below and let me know, and do something different in this time. But with that, hopefully you guys went on to enjoy this video. Make sure you follow us on Instagram and Facebook. Links to both are down below. In fact, I put out an Instagram reel not too long ago, kind of hinting onto what the next video is. So if you follow me over there, you actually get some previews of things that you don't get on YouTube a lot sooner. So with that, make sure you do follow us on Instagram and Facebook. Once again, thank you for everybody that entered the giveaways, and congratulations to the winners. Make sure you reach out to me via DM or Messenger or email to claim your prizes, and also make sure you enter the giveaway for this video. And with that, guys, hey, thank you so very much, and I hope you're having a wonderful holiday season, and I am super grateful for each and every one of you. So with that, we will see you next time.